Do you wish you could talk to your parents about sex in a grown-up and unembarrassing way? See, I've just spent a week at home with my mum, and that's the first time I've been out of London for nearly 12 months. Probably last November, so 9-10 months. And of course, that's all to do with the thing that's been going on. And I've always had a good relationship with my mum. She's a single parent, so there was no one else to talk to about this kind of things. So I talked to my mum. We'd never really had the talk, which is probably a good thing. I had decent sex education, adequate sex education at school. And also I was curious and, I don't want to say clever enough, but wise enough, shall we say, to understand what is good sex ed and what is bad sex ed. But what that meant is that I could talk to my mum about girlfriends and about, not about sex. I never actually talked to her about the mechanics of sex. That's fine. But you know, about things that might happen in a loving relationship, right? Why am I being so coy about this? I'm having this now. I'm being actually embarrassed. Talking to you about talking to my mum about sex. That's hilarious. Not as embarrassed as some people, obviously, but embarrassed nonetheless. So this video is going to be all about talking to your parents about sex. And, you know, it could be you're 14, 15, 16 years old and you haven't had the talk, and you are having problems even approaching the subject. Or maybe you are 18, 19, 20, even through your 20s and through your 30s. And, you know, you still have questions because everybody has questions, and you want to ask your parents about that because they've been through it in some way. Maybe you've got some sort of sexual dysfunction or other condition related to the reproductive system, which could be hereditary. So one of them is potentially PCOS. And you want to ask your parents, your mother, your dad, or anybody else in your family for that matter, about it, because, you know, they might have lived through it and can give you some idea about what to do. And they obviously know you better than any teacher, any person at school or at university or wherever. Just before we go any further, my name is Andy. I talk about sex education and similar kind of things in videos on this channel. So that's a great reason to stick around. You'll learn plenty, I'm sure. And that includes what we're talking about today. Maybe you are somebody who has no problem about talking to their parents about sex, but you might find there is a particular subject which you just cannot broach with them, cannot approach them with. Well, here is some ideas, tips, and things you might want to think about before, during the talk. The other talk, not that talk. Okay, well, let's just jump into this. I've written some notes, so we'll be good. We'll be good. Okay, so before you talk to your parents, you need to work out what it is that you want to talk to them about. Is it about a specific thing? Is it just a general conversation? Is it just to get some idea of, you know, things which you might want to look out for in future? You might not even know what you want to talk about. That's fine, as long as you know that and you're just trying to, you know, bring the subject up, maybe for a future talk. By the way, that, if you're wondering, is I'm testing paint. I can't paint fully in this flat until next year, but that is a tester. I think it looks fine. We might go for that colour. You might find that wall turns that colour in about 6 months' time. So the next thing you could do is do some research on what you want to talk about, so you're not coming in completely blind. If it's a specific subject that you want to talk about, you know, just get a brief overview of what the thing is, you know, so you're not flying blind, you're not coming in cold, and you have some idea of whether what you're being told is useful or actually completely irrelevant. And the last tip before you go in and try and speak to your parents is to understand what you need from the conversation. What is the answers that you're looking for? Is it a personal story that you're looking for? Is it just some general advice? Is it just some way of connecting with your parents? So before you're talking to your parents, you need to know what you want to talk about, do some research on that, and find out what you actually want out of the conversation. But you've done all that, you've done your preparation, and now it's time. How do you get into talking about sex? Especially if you're not that open with your parents in general. So rather than going straight in, you could use a television program, magazine article, YouTube video, maybe not this one, maybe some other one I've made. Or if you want to talk about sex more generally, there are films which, have sex scenes in, or television programs with sex scenes in. You absolutely use that kind of thing as a springboard into talking about sex. And then use that as a way of working up to the thing which is personal to you. But maybe you don't want to do that face to face. Maybe you don't want to be sat in the room talking to your parents. Then, okay, why not go for text messages, instant messages, however you communicate with your parents in text, Perhaps writing letters is a bit old-fashioned, but you go for it. If you do you. Maybe though, you do want to go straight in and just have a one-to-one chat with your parents about the subject that you want to talk about. But rather than ambushing your parents, maybe say to them, can we have a private chat tonight? And say, after dinner or whenever. That way, you've got their full attention, they're taking it seriously, and you can go directly in with whatever it is you want to talk about. Don't be afraid to acknowledge that this is awkward, particularly if you're asking about your parents' relationship. It can be an awkward thing, but it can be really good to acknowledge that awkwardness because it can make it disappear. It's all about acknowledging the elephant in the room, right? So you might be feeling awkward. Well, guess what? Your parents probably are as well. So if you acknowledge the awkwardness, then it makes it a bit better, it makes it easier for everybody. And you might have some very specific questions that you want to ask. Maybe the first time your parents had sex, maybe about STDs and all that kind of thing. So think about specific questions that you want to ask your parents in advance. And you could write them down if you really want, but have some idea about the questions that you want to ask rather than making them up on the spot. But also tell them why you're asking, because there's nothing more annoying than saying that you want this information, all the rest of it, and then getting the wrong idea about why. Your parents making assumptions about why you're talking to them about it can be, annoying and wrong. Easy to make a decision, perhaps, whether you should have sex or shouldn't have sex, or whether you want to go out with somebody or dump somebody, all sorts of things. And they can help you in making that decision. Maybe, especially if you're a bit older and maybe not yet married, but in a relationship, maybe it'll be about whether you should have children now or later. Maybe, it could be about contraception. It could be about anything like that. Particularly useful to ask your parents about that kind of thing, about planning a family, because of course they've got a family, that's why you're talking to them, and they will have pretty good advice for your situation because they've been through it. And don't be afraid to ask for a friend. And I don't mean that in the memeable sense, asking for a friend, but it really means you. I mean actually asking for a friend. So somebody who maybe they can't ask their parents, maybe they don't have parents, they don't have anybody to turn to. Maybe you can be the person who asks somebody in the know with the knowledge and with the life experience that can help that person. And it can also help you at the same time, even if you haven't got the problem right here and now. And the last piece of advice I want to give when you're talking to your parents is go back to when you're preparing and find out what it is that you were trying to aim at. And don't be afraid to push your parents on this. It might be over 2 or 3 talks. It doesn't have to be all in one. If you go away and think about it and you've got more questions, by all means, come back and talk to your parents again. The first time is the hardest. Second, third, fourth time gets much easier. Are you somebody who is able to talk to their parents? And have you got any tips yourself? Why not leave them as comments below? Because this is just a quick overview really of what you could do. There are plenty of tips out there that might help you. Or maybe you have talked to your parents and there are a few things which you wish you'd asked them. Leave those in the comments below and we can all help. I hope you liked the video. If you did, then give it a thumbs up. You can do that down below. I make videos more or less every single week on sex education and welfare topics, so subscribe and click the little bell icon so you know when I next upload, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye. I've realised that is going to be on that wall, because I obviously film my videos here. That's going to be on that wall for the next 6 months. And I'm going to get comments. I'm going to have to point them back to this one, because I'm not explaining it every single video, that's for sure.